गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। सच्चिदानन्दरूपाय विश्वोत्पत्त्यादिहेतवे तापत्रयविनाशाय श्रीकृष्णाय वयं नुमः। श्रीकृष्णाय वयं नुमः। ॐ योऽन्तः प्रविश्य मम वाचमिमां प्रसुप्तां सञ्जीवयत्यखिलशक्तिधरस्वधाम्नाम् अन्याश्च हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान्नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यं। प्राणान्नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यं। प्राणान्नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यं। Now we enter into the proper text of Narad Bhakti Sutra, the sutras of Narada, the first sutra, chapter 1, and this chapter 1, the first chapter is talks about the bhakti, the love divine, and in it there are 3 sections. The first section talks about bhakti of love divine, second talks about uniqueness of the love, and the third section talks about the definitions of love. So the first topic will be, what is this devotion towards this transcendental divinity? The first sutra says of the section 1, Athato bhaktim vyakhyāsyāmaha. You can repeat. Athato bhaktim vyakhyāsyāmaha. We will have to give these books.
You want me to give to
those who are coming for only the weekend, come afterwards. First let me give to those, you can share one between 2 of you, because I got only 15 books. Who else is left? You got, Sunil? Amma, come. Everyone got it?
Yeah, you also got it.
Huh? Everyone got it? So how come I got 15 and I gave out 19? And still one left. Take.
I'm a weekender, anybody want, they can have a book.
So that you can do afterwards, okay? So here we are. Repeat after me. Athato bhaktim vyakhyāsyāmaha. Athato bhaktim vyakhyāsyāmaha. Ataha bhaktim vyakhyāsyāmaha. Ataha means now, Ataha means therefore, and Vyakhyasama is the doctrine of devotion we shall be expounding or we shall expound. Now, lot of scriptures begin with this word Athaha. Athato Brahma Jigyasaha, Athato Karma Jigyasaha. Jaimini Sutras begin with Athaha Athato Karma Jigyasaha. Now we expound the doctrine of karma. The Brahma Sutras begin with Athato Brahma Jigyasaha. Now we expound what is Brahman. Similarly here, Athato Bhakti. Now we expound what is Bhakti. Then many other scriptures, like most of the Upanishads, they also begin with Om. Om is also that same thing. For example, our Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, that also begins with Athaha. What does Atha means? Now. What does now mean? Can you explain now? Huh? Now we begin our morning class. What does that mean? That means you should not be sleeping, you should have covered your sleep, you should have had your breakfast, you should have taken shower, you should have brushed your teeth, you should have gone to toilet, you should have gone for a walk, you should have done your exercise, you should have your mind in the right frame to be available for this first lecture, isn't it? That you are on time, that you are alert while the lecture is. That now the time has come, isn't it? So all that. So what does here Atha mean? Atha means now. Now also means where the reality, the divinity can be apprehended. Because only in the present you can come to know the reality, not in the past nor in the future. Read that Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Isn't it? You have all come across that. That now. It's the most pregnant moment wherein the reality is available, wherein the Lord is available. When I use the word reality in this text, it means the Lord Divine. It is available. That means you have done whatever had to be done, you have come to the conclusions, having analyzed the life, and therefore you have come to this point in your life to say, now. Yesterday I told you Maharishi Vedvyas, he studied all the Vedas. Then he came to, now what do I do? Still there is an emptiness. How do I complete that emptiness? Even though I have realized the truth, but then what? Until and unless, see, this thing many meditators go through. Once they know on the seat of meditation that they are that, they come to know I am that. After that what? They come out of that meditation and they continue to maintain the differences in the world. Until and unless this world can be, the experience of the world can be converted into a divine experience, till then salvation is not complete. Having known the truth inside you is one thing, but truth is inside and within and without, isn't it? So how do you convert that without into the divine experience? Wherein what you see, hear, touch, feel, taste, think, the various emotions that you come across, everything, the gross world, the subtle world, everything is to be seen with the eye of divinity. And that can only happen by His grace, isn't it? Therefore now. So in this way, whatever needs to be done has been done. And now you have come to this point, like Maharishi Vedvyas, wherein after coming to that point, he started writing the Bhagavad Mahapuran, which is a text of devotion. What happens? This knowledge of being the truth gets converted, starts percolating down from the head into the heart. That is what is required. And that is not possible without the aspect of devotion having been cultivated in your heart. What is that devotion? That is the whole text. So here, Ramanujacharya, who is Rama? See, there are three different schools of thoughts in our country. First is the Madhva Panth, Madhvacharya path, which maintains the difference between the devotee and the Lord. So the devotee can only serve the Lord, he can never become one with the Lord. The Ramanujacharya path, which is called the Vishishta Advait, the first one was called Dvait path, second is called Vishishta Advait, and in that the individual is part of the total, the infinite, the Lord, and because of whatever reasons he seems to have a separate identity, and at time of realization through devotion he again goes back into his source. And the third is the Shankaracharya path, which is the Advait path, wherein the premise is that everything is already divine, transcendental, formless, attributeless, and that is our essential nature. And whether we are under the spell of ignorance, whether we are under the arrogance of knowledge, we are already realized. We just don't know that. So here Ramanujacharya gives about 7 prerequisites in order to come to this athaha. Now, what are those prerequisites? The preparatory pointers. The first one is viveka, means discrimination between and here the viveka is not about, here he says discrimination in food. Now our understanding of food should we eat porridge or should we eat raisin bread? No. The food is what is coming in. For the eyes, the food is the forms and the colors. For the food for the ears is the sounds. Food for the tongue is the taste. Food for the mind is thoughts. Food for the nose is the various fragrances. So discriminate what you allow to come in and what you don't allow. And what is not conducive to our growth, we keep it at bay. So therefore our Gandhiji's 3 monkeys: see no evil, hear no evil, talk no evil. Isn't it? So discriminate with regards to what food you take in or allow in. And that equally it is true with regards to the gross food also. Because if you eat leftovers, leftover is tamasic. If you eat microwave food, it is tamasic. Tamasic thoughts. Early in the morning you feel sleepy. Why? We had tamasic, yesterday's food. No. Eat always fresh, as much as you can. I know it is difficult nowadays, but make attempt. That's all we can do. Eventually we have to go beyond whether it is old or good, fresh. But initially it is necessary. That Gajanan Maharaj of Shegaon from Maharashtra, he was found sitting outside a house where Satyanarayan Puja was going on, and he was eating from the gutter along with the dogs. All the thrown away food plates, those patravali, the paper leaf plates, the people had eaten the food and they had thrown whatever the leftovers were there. So he was feeding the dog and he was feeding himself. The people inside, the host, when he came out and looked, he was disgusted with the sight that he saw. And this fellow squatting on the floor, rummaging through the pile of plates, taking out whatever scraps of food were there, first feeding the dog and whatever was left in his hand, that putting into his mouth. And then he kept watching how disgusting can a man be, how low he can fall that he can't even ask and beg for food. Why he has to go and eat like that, like an animal? While he was just thinking, Gajanan Maharaj went and that open sewage gutter which was flowing outside the house, he picked up the water and drank to swallow the food. He was even more disgusted and he couldn't stop himself, and he said, "Hey man, can't you look young, you look strong, you look bright, why you are living like this?" He says, "What did I do wrong?" He says, "Drinking that gutter water, come, I'll give you some water." No, this is Ganga Jal. You also come drink. And at that time, in front of his eyes, he picked that dirty, murky water in his two palms, and in front of him, and while he was drinking, it turned into crystal clear water. Suddenly, some magic happened in that guy. He said, this cannot be a normal fellow. And before he just went in, before it dawned on him, he came back out, Maharaj was gone. See? So, that is the ultimate state where it does not matter whether it is tamasic food or rajasic food. But here, we are seekers. That Maharaj has gone beyond the now. We are arriving at now. To arrive at this point, at this now, before we can develop the devotion within our hearts, the prerequisite is discrimination in the intake of food, gross and subtle. Second one is freedom from desire, vimukhaha. Ramanujacharya says, vimukh means that when the desires appear, do not give value and attention to them. That is vimukha. Because you do not have any control over desires erupting in your mind. But you have the choice whether you give value to that desire or attention to the desire, or don't give attention and value to that desire. If you give value and attention to the desire will germinate. If you don't give that value and attention, it will die its own death. Can you suppress the desire? Yes, you can suppress the desire. But here he does not say suppress the desire. Because you can, through willpower, suppress the desire. But it will come back to haunt you with even greater force. So vimukhaha. Third is abhyasa, a regular practice. Regular practice of what? The previous two. Discrimination in food as well as staying away from or witnessing the desire. And then staying away from desire also means that not giving value to this world. The more value you give to this world, the more desires will be there. So, freedom from desires, meaning I'm not, from inside there is no, longing to hold on to things that come into my life. Sometimes you don't want things, but still things keep coming. People keep coming. Relationships keep forming. Otherwise, what happens when we form a relationship with someone? Unknowingly it has created, and then that person suddenly stops coming into your life. You call, doesn't pick up the phone. You speak, doesn't want to speak to you. Things happen like this. And then how our mind goes? I did so much for that fellow. I was available. I called him for food. He used to call me for food. We used to go out for movies together. We used to go out for trekking together. It was such a good relationship. What happened to him? That fellow is happy, but you are miserable because you are still attached to that relationship. Understand, this whole world is your family. Just like the ocean does not become excited nor get depressed whether a wave is appearing in it or disappearing in it. Why? Everything I am. Keep that attitude in your mind as you move through life. So there is no over-involvement in anything. Yet, involvement is there, but only to such an extent that it doesn't become an impediment in your own journey. Very, very important. Abhyasa. And for that, you have to alertly practice this on a daily basis. Not only daily, moment to moment basis. Then you can come into the moment, now. Then the fourth one is kriya, habit of doing good to others. So, my rule more or less is, if anyone comes into my life, must go away with a smile. And that keeps me focused all the time with regards to my mind. That am I becoming a cause of disturbance to another person? I don't want to be that. In one or two cases, I can't avoid it. It's unavoidable. Even if I don't want to, it happens. So, by default, that I have given 100% discount.
That is Prakriti.
That is Prakriti. So, habit of doing good to others. Life is not about what I can get from others in return. Life is about how much more can I sacrifice for another person. See? If the mindset is what can I get in return? I know Surendran, he's a teacher. I'm thinking of joining a course in mathematics, so I'll get free tuition from him. You are whatever you in, so I can learn how to do nothing from him. She is a good cook. I can learn how to be a good cook from her. Free. I don't have to pay. Because then some people collect such friends around so that the plumbing is free, the electrician is free, the carpenter is free, the lawyer is free, all professions, and they go out and purposely cultivate such relationships. In that, the mindset is, I need something in return. And what is the conclusion of that? Your mind continues to remain a slave of this world. But if, on the other hand, you continue to bubble with love, bubble with service, bubble with sacrifice towards whoever is coming, known or unknown, no partiality, and continue to do good, then there is a possibility that you can come to that state of being a master of this world. But to be the master of the world, you have to cultivate this initially, the habit of giving. Not only, and that giving is being called good here. Not receiving. You have to be a giver. In receiving, you become small. In giving, you expand. Then the fifth one is purity in thought, word and deed. Non-violence, charity and such other virtues. They are called Kalyan. Kalyan is auspiciousness, doing. And by doing all these, practicing all this in our life, we make sure that even by mistake, we are not doing wrong towards another person through thought, word or deed. We do not disturb another person by our mind, by our thoughts. When you think about a particular person with intensity, you must have all experienced. That person calls you. When you think of a person with intensity in anger, that person feels that. If you desire some person with intensity, that person will come into your life. Whether you desire or if you desire that person not to come into your life, he will still or she will still come into your life to give you trouble, because you don't want that person, so that person comes and gives you trouble. Because that person does not know whether you thought about that person for coming close or going far away. That person comes. Your mind attracts whatever it thinks about. So, by words we do not disturb others, and by deed we do not disturb others. This is the first aspect which is given in our in our Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Yama Niyama. Yama is living in such a manner you do not disturb the world by thought, word or deed, nor get disturbed by anyone's thought, word or deed. So you create an armor around yourself, within your mind, not around yourself, within your mind, of non-disturbance. As much as we may disturb or get disturbed by others in the world, even more potent is that by our thought, word and deed, we disturb ourselves. The inner bubblings that are going on, which happens on the seat of meditation. When we feel the guilt, we feel, bad about what we have done. Or we get excited what we have done. So we have to contain that. Then sixth one is cheerfulness, anavasada. Continuously, if you do these above points, 5 points, practice them in your life, automatic there will be cheerfulness. There will be a joy for no reason. Such a person cannot but live an inspired life. Inspired life brings about cheer on the face. And only a person who's happy within, is cheerful within, can bring the cheer to other people. You yourself are miserable and want to give joy to others. It's not possible. And the last one is absence of excessive hilariousness. So feel the joy, because cheerfulness can take you into ecstasy. That ecstasy can express as boisterous laughter or jumping around or too much. No, contain it. Gather that energy and direct it towards the Lord. Don't let it spill out uncontrollably without a purpose. Give it direction. And in this way, even in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 12th chapter, from the 13th verse to the 20th verse, in the 12th chapter, which is a chapter on devotion, again these points are enumerated, and there the Lord says, Adveshta sarva bhutanam maitra karuna evacha nirmamo nirahankaraha samadukha sukha kshami santushta satatam yogi yatatma drudha nishchayah mayyarpita mano buddhihi madbhakta same priyah. He who is free from malice towards all beings, friendly and compassionate, rid of I and mine, balanced in joy and sorrow, forgiving by nature, ever contented and mentally united with me, nay, who has subdued his mind, senses and body, has a firm resolve and has surrendered his mind and reason to me, that devotee of mine is dear to me. Continuing, the Lord says, Yasma no dvijate loko, loka no dvijate chayah, harsha marsha bhayo dvegaihi, muktoya sacha me priyah. He who is not a source of annoyance to his fellow creatures, and who in his turn does not feel vexed with the fellow creatures, and who is free from delight and envy, perturbation and fear, is dear to me. Same point was covered by Ramanujacharya. Anapeksha shuchir dakshah udasino gata yatha sarvarambha parityagi yo madbhakta same priyah. He who wants nothing, he who is both internally and externally pure, is clever and impartial and has been above all distractions, and who renounces the feeling of doership in all undertakings. That devotee of mine is very dear to me. Next one. Yo na hrishyati na dveshti, na shochati na kankshati, shubha shubha parityagi, bhakti manya same priyah. He who neither rejoices nor hates, nor grieves nor desires, and who renounces both good and evil actions and is full of devotion, is dear to me. And the last 3 verses, Samashatrau cha mitre cha tatha manapamanayoho shitoshna sukha dukkheshu samasanga vivarjitaha तुल्य निंदास्तुतिर्मौनी संतुष्टो येन केनचित् अनिकेतः स्थिरमतिः भक्तिमान में प्रियो नरः. He who is alike to friend and foe, as well as to honor and dishonor, who remains balanced in heat and cold, pleasure and pain and other contrary experiences, and is free from attachment, he also takes praise and reproach alike, and is given to contemplation and contented with any means of subsistence whatsoever, entertaining no sense of ownership and attachment in respect of the dwelling place, and full of devotion to me, that man is dear to me. And the last one, ye tu dharmyamrutamidam yathoktam paryupasate shraddhadhana mat parama bhaktaste tiva me priyaha. Those devotees, however, who partake in a disinterested way of this nectar of pious wisdom set forth above, endowed with faith and solely devoted to me, they are extremely dear to me. And in this way, what Ramanujacharya has said and what Patanjali Yoga Sutra says in the first two verses of the Ashtanga Yoga, not verses, first 2 points, Yama and Niyama, is covered in, it has been expanded in these 6-7 verses of the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And by practicing all this, what will happen? You will come into this pregnant now where devotion is possible. Without these prerequisites, it is not possible. We have come here for devotion, and if you go back home for AC and bed, you have lost the plot. I also took the fan, but today I can't. Lost the plot. We must be comfortable wherever we are. When difficulties come in our life, at that time, that moment is an opportune moment for us to invoke the capacity to handle that difficulty. Because the difficulty does not come without you being prepared to handle it. And that is the time we can go beyond heat and cold. That is the moment we can go beyond hunger and thirst. When the hunger is troubling us. And then, so here, this is what is known, by this we come to the athaha, now. Then after that, what is the word? Tataha, athato, ataha. Ataha means therefore. Now what is therefore? After having come to this moment, after having practiced all these various mindsets, these qualities, living a correct life so that you have come to this point, now therefore one must expose their mind, must be available to these verses on devotion. And in this way, the third word therefore is Vyakhyāsyāmaha. Bhakti is not possible. Now we shall expound what is devotion. Devotion is not possible, or you are not available to the exposition on bhakti, on devotion, without having first renounced the world. If the urges inside are still there to be involved in the world, you will not be available to the Lord. No, but we want to have 1 foot in the Lord, towards the Lord, and 1 foot towards the world. Not possible initially. Ramana Maharishi says, yes, it is possible. How? While living in the world, remain a witness. Easily said than done. But how does that witnessing happen? He says it just happens. Don't get identified with anything. But how do you not get identified with anything? You have to again practice all these points. It's not that you have to practice all these points, you have to just understand deeply and become convinced of it. Automatically it starts expressing in your daily life. It's not that you are sitting there, I must discriminate. What is coming through my eyes? Form. I am not disturbed by the form. Not like that. What is coming in front of me? Porridge, toast. I am not going to be disturbed or attracted by the porridge or toast. You will go crazy if you do that. But recognize that directly proportional to your renunciation and of attachment to the world is your devotion towards the Lord. Easier way is, because simplest is take the name of the Lord with deep devotion and everything will start happening. Because you have replaced the love of the world with the love of the Lord. And automatic withdrawal will happen. When you go to sleep at night, you deeply feel that I must go to sleep and rest. So your love for sleep is greater than the love for remaining awake to the experience of the world. So you don't drop the world gets dropped in your love for the sleep. See? So that is one way of, that is the best way of cultivating devotion. So Bhaktim Vyakhyasamaha. So here we shall expound. Why is he using the word we? Syamaha is we. Why is it we? When Narad Muni is saying, oh, I am, it shows that devotion was practiced even before these sutras were written. But it was not in an organized way. Each one was practicing in different way. Someone is practicing devotion by Matru Devo Bhava, Pitru Devo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava. Another one is doing this. Another one is chanting Om. Another one is chanting the name of the Lord. Another one wants to get to the heaven. There are many, Patram, Phalam, Toyam, Pushpam, all those things are there. Many different ways are there. But nobody had ever organized the whole thought. What happens in devotion? How to cultivate devotion? There was never any exposition written on it. Just like yoga was practiced even before Patanjali Maharaj wrote the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. But he gave it a format, isn't it? The Vedas were also present before in the entire world. But what Maharishi Vedvyas did, he organized it the way we see it today. And what Narad Muni has done is taken those salient points from that were prevalent in the world at that time and put them into a right format. So that it is, our mind gets organized rather than one girl from Sydney, she just wrote to me, Swamiji, I gave talk at their house on the 1st and the topic was, we don't need scriptures to realize the truth. And then what? We don't need scriptures. Yes, why you want to clutter your mind with more and more words? But the argument was, but the Vedanta, you have to study Vedanta, we have to gain knowledge. Without knowledge, how can we come to know? I said, people, I fooled you. What is Vedanta? End of Vedas. What are Vedas? Words. So end of words is equal to Vedanta. So how much more will you collect? How much more knowledge will you gain? The more knowledge you gain, the more confused you are. See? So she wrote an email. Swamiji, your thoughts are, my thoughts are synchronizing with your thoughts. I also feel that way. But sometimes I get confused. How do I live in this world keeping a balance between, between spirituality and my duties towards the world? She is a student. Oh.
Knowledge, is it only that you gain by the words, Swamiji? We can't get knowledge without that as well.
No, so that's what the point I explained to them. I said, all the masters that we know, except in certain ashrams, in the Shankaracharya formula, lineage, they never studied scriptures. Akkalkot Maharaj never studied scriptures, Shirdi Sai Baba never studied scriptures, Satya Sai Baba never studied scriptures, Ammachi never studied scriptures, huh? Neem Karoli Baba never studied scriptures. Then from where? Then how come they know? When you know your cup is full, your head is full, then nothing more can come in. Divinity is waiting. Yaar, ye kab khali hoga? When will it become empty so that I can enter? But we are cluttering our mind with more and more and more knowledge. Raman Maharishi, he never studied scriptures. After realization, he studied scriptures to confirm.
Same with Eckhart Tolle.
Eckhart Tolle,
He didn't know what had happened.
yes. See? I also went to ashram without any knowledge of scriptures. Only 14 years of sadhana, 14, 15 years of sadhana. And there they made a fool out of me on the first day. They asked me, you know Vedas? I said, yes. You know Upanishads? I never heard the word Upanishad in my life. Never heard. All of them were gathering. Australia say, Vedanta course. He has come to study Vedanta course and he doesn't know what Upanishads are. Have you heard of Brahma Sutras? I said, what is that? You know what does Vedanta, what do they teach? I said, I don't know. Teacher will tell me what I have to study. No, Vedanta is the study of the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads and the Brahma Sutras. I said, Acha, I didn't know that. I only heard the word Gita. He says, you know how many verses are in the Gita? I said, no. He said, how many chapters in the Gita? I said, that also I don't know. And they had a good laugh. I didn't know what Brahma Sutra was. It was not that I was proud of my ignorance, but because when they confronted me with these questions, I realized I didn't know. But now I realize when I hear that in an empty cup you can pour something, but a full cup which already knows everything, how can you change that person's mindset? It is a hard task for a teacher to undo one's mind and pour the knowledge. So here, so that student, then I told her something with this regards, that once you have become convinced of what the destination is, the main problem with everyone is unclarity with regards to the goal of life. Forget about living. Living will happen. Living will happen. Every activity that comes out of us is determined by the conviction that we are holding. So last night you went to sleep with the thought that we have to get here at 6 o'clock for meditation. Then everything automatically started happening, isn't it? You don't have to think again and again. You automatically, even if you don't get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, today you got up, took shower, you came here. The moment meditation over, I said, okay, till 9, quarter to 9 we are free. Automatically in that quarter to 9, chalo bhai, we don't have to rush with breakfast. All activity gets prompted by the decision that you have made in your mind. So this is with regards to just temporary points in our life which we have become convinced about. Are you convinced about where your whole life is going towards? Is it going towards, some people say, I want to go to heaven. So their activities will be directed by that. Some people say, we want to get to the self. Their activities will get directed towards that, provided they are very clear what that destination called self is. You know what destination called sleep is. That means a nice bed with a fan, which is not available. Meditation is a clear idea or conviction in your mind that you have to come to this hall. Destination is clear. Your seat is fixed. Time is fixed. You don't have any ambiguity with regards to that. Do you? where you have to come to the class or for meditation. But with regards to realization, is there ambiguity? What is realization? Is it God realization? Is it divine realization? Is it nirvana? Is it salvation? Is it one without a second? Or is it the Lord with whom I have to become one to? Or do I have to go to Vaikuntha or to Saket or to Kailash? My God, so many options in realization. A person gets confused. So one must go deep into their heart and find out what is realization to them. And how will you come to that conclusion? After having studied all this, if you make a decision that this is realization, how do I get there? To this child I said, you stop, you do whatever you are doing, but all that is required, the conviction becomes stronger and stronger and stronger only when the mind becomes more and more purified. Without a purified mind, conviction is shallow. Like in Vedanta we say, Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam. Shravanam is listening, Mananam is reflection. What do you do in reflection? You remove your doubts. Directly proportional to the removal of doubts is the conviction, isn't it? When all doubts are removed, 100% conviction is Nididhyasan automatically happens. That is, meditation automatically happens. Abidance automatically happens. So how do you now remove the what was that? The doubts. Doubts can be n number of doubts in your mind. We don't even know what doubts are still lurking in our mind. But we know this much, that we want to know God. So what is the easiest? She says, Swamiji, I go to this place, they say chant Om Namah Shivaya. I go to that place, they say chant this mantra. All that I understand, I must do something, I must hold on to something. Is there something easier? Chant Om. So my email was, Om already includes all the mantras, all the Vedas. So why you want to clutter your mind with so many words? Every meditation must conclude in Om, and Om must conclude in silence. You may begin with Om Namah Shivaya, but it must conclude in Om. And that Om must take you to silence. And that silence is where you are awake, not sleeping. Because silence is in deep sleep also. And then, when you bring this, about within yourself, then whatever is required by you in your life will be presented to you. Whatever sadhana needs to be done afterwards, that will be presented to you. Whatever books you need to read, that will automatically come to you, or you will get attracted to them. You don't have to concentrate. There are so many books. I said, I also felt the same way when I used to go to Theosophical Society. So many. I want to read this, I want to read this, I want to read this. I was like a sponge wanting more and more and more information. But a point came, money started getting over, and even now that habit is there to collect books, that I will read them. So habit of buying books is still there, but habit of reading books is gone. That is where I am at the moment with regards to that. Because I don't want to clutter anymore. Then what do I want? What do I do? Whenever my mind attracts me to a certain book, I just go and read that. And now I read, if I at all I read only the biographies. I brought one biography of one called Naga Mahashay. He was one of the disciples of Paramahamsa, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. So rather than you make the decision, allow, yes, to some extent we do make a decision to remain with the divine thought. That divine thought is the thought of Om. And as a result of the purification of the mind, the convictions will become evident. It will become deeper. The mind will become single pointed automatically. So here Narad Muniji says, Vyakhyasamaha, that now we will give a commentary on devotion. And then the second sutra says, Sa Tu Asmin Parama Prema Rupa Sa Tu Asmin Parama Prema Rupa. Here it is written Sa Tvasmin, but actually it is Tu Asmin, that U plus A becomes verb. Sandhi rule is there. So Sa Tvasmin Parama Prema Rupa. Sa means that, Tu means indeed, Parama Prema Rupa of the nature of supreme devotion, Asmin in that. So that devotion is indeed of the nature of supreme love, in that, in brackets, God. So first that is for the devotion, and the second that, in that, is the Lord Himself. Now we are not defining what Lord is here. Each one to his own buffet. Choose whether you want it to be Nirgun Nirakar, formless and attributeless, whether you want it to be with attributes but no form, whether you want it with form and with attributes. Choose. Whether it is Krishna, Rama, Jesus, does not matter. Buddha. But here Narad Muniji is expounding on what is devotion, not towards what. He does not want to bring different philosophies in between. He wants to consider that divinity as that one unifying principle. So here he says, that, what is devotion? That the first Sa, that devotion is the supreme love for the Lord is devotion. And what is this supreme love for the Lord? Wherein the mind is totally absorbed in the theme of the divine, and this absorption or contemplation or love for the Lord is such that there is no demand from the Lord of any sort. It demands nothing. It does not even demand that, please God, give me realization. Yesterday I told you, Hanumanji, when Ramchandraji asked him, tell me, what do you want? He could have asked, I want to be one with you and the story is over. But instead, he asked for devotion to the Lord. Otherwise, see, Dhruva, we talked about Dhruva also. Dhruva asked, when Lord appeared in front of him, he asked, tell me, what do you want? He says, oh Lord, after having your vision, what can anyone have any desire? No, you know everything. I don't want anything from you. But if the Lord has come, He will give you something. And what will He give you? The intention with which you began the journey. So if your intention was, Lord, you started, I want to have a good wife, and you started, and somewhere along the way you forgot the wife and you remembered the Lord, and the Lord appeared. He said, what do you want? I don't want anything, you are everything. He said, but you started with the wife, tathastu. Phas gaya, it is stuck. So if you have not solved the equation in your mind, Lord knows what you are thinking. So Dhruva, even though he was young, Lord came, he said, I don't want anything from, you are the goal in itself. But he says, but you started you started your meditation with the feeling, with the intention that I want to sit on the lap of my Lord. That was your intention. On the lap of my father. But now I am your father, so you will sit in my lap. So he gave him a permanent place called the pole star till the end of creation. See? So it is very, very important with what mindset we do our sadhana. What are the convictions that we are harboring within ourselves? So here, supreme devotion is that devotion in which we demand nothing and we don't even demand liberation. And the mind is only filled with loving devotion towards the Lord. Tears are flowing, thrill is coming in your mind and body, and that's all. And that keeps you away from everything in this world and keeps you focused. That is a, side effect of that devotion, and you remain with the chanting of the Lord. Just like a mother remains unconcerned about the world, but about the nourishment of that child. Yesterday, one of the, Binti, all of you, she gave birth to a baby boy on 29th. Very sweet. So now, continuously, she does not think of sleep or food or anything, but every minute, oh, how is he doing? See how he is looking. See, is he hungry? Is he comfortable? Continuously, mind is totally focused on it. And in that focus, now she is not thinking about her job, she is not thinking about her hunger, she is not thinking about her comforts, but instead she is thinking about the babies. When we start thinking like that towards the Lord, automatically our mind will wean away from the world and get in the loving remembrance of the Lord. And in this manner, the thoughts continuously flow towards the Supreme with love and devotion. And that is a devotion. And when this attitude is cultivated within your heart and mind, wherein all thoughts with great loving feeling are flowing towards the divine theme, that is called devotion. It is not an idea in your head, but it is a feeling in your heart. And the feeling is more powerful than the ideas, the bhava. And this is called as Parama Prema Rupa. Parama, transcendental, Prema, love, Roop of the form of the supreme transcendental love. This is called Ananya Bhakti, that which is exclusive. When we say in meditation, be attentive to the breath at the nostrils to the exclusion of all other thoughts. It means exclusively you are attentive at that point to the breath, isn't it? Similarly, here also you become Ananya Bhakti, you become exclusively available, meaning you are not giving attention to anything else but that feeling in your heart towards the love towards the Lord. And in this manner, a common man is seen to have devotion also, and that devotion is towards his car, is towards his house, is towards his wife, is towards his children, and he continues to be devoted to his duties, continues to be devoted to his ambition, continues to be devoted towards whatever needs to be done in this world, but gains what? What does he gain in life by having that devotion? Only temporary joys, isn't it? Only temporary joys. With so much devotion, we prepare nice food and then we eat. For how long? Only 3 hours. Again we are hungry afterwards. Again we spend so much time cooking and then again we eat. You ask Lalita, she prepares with so much love, but she doesn't enjoy her own food. She says, by smelling only I am full. Last retreat, she was saying she lost 4 kgs. So she is attending class, she is cooking. But it is not for herself. It is as a service, as a seva. When we start performing every activity in our life as a seva, as a service, with love to that Supreme Divinity, you will lose weight. Not only physical but also mental. All the load that you are carrying in your life, of the duties, of the aspirations, of the ambitions, of the future, everything will get dropped off. Try. So, in that Atma, in that Asmin, in that God, in that reality, in that Supreme Divinity, and here this Supreme Divinity, as I said before, is not indicating any one type of divinity. The Narad Muniji, he has kept it secular. You decide what divinity is for you to pursue. We are here talking on devotion. We are not talking about which divine. Divinity can only be one. And in this way, the more we practice love for the Lord, the more we inculcate love in our heart for the Lord, the more we surrender our heart in love towards the Supreme Divinity, it keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. Exponentially it grows. Whatever you do, and that's what you are doing in life. You enjoy eating, so you learn all the dishes. You enjoy certain knitting, you want to try new designs in knitting. You enjoy researching, you find out more and more things to discover. When you enjoy the love for the Lord, you find new ways to love the Lord. You are hooked on it then. So, what is this love? This love is the relationship between the lover and the beloved. And when the love happens, then all sense of right and wrong, all sense of inhibitions, all sense of what people will say or not say, the lovers become oblivious to. Totally. And then true devotion expresses. If there is, we must meet with each other, but you see some Hindi movies are there, Bollywood movies, in which the boy is Muslim and the girl is Hindu, or a Hindu boy and a Muslim girl, and they are in love. Now what to do? They don't care. The whole village, the whole clan is fighting with each other. They don't care. They are in love. We didn't ask you to fight each other. For the lover and the beloved, if the whole world goes to dogs, so be it. But the love is the highest goal to be aspired for. And that's what we are seeking in life, knowingly or unknowingly. But the goal has to be correct one. If it is the goal is the world, it will be only temporary joy, temporary love for the objects. If the goal is the Lord, there is a possibility that it is permanent love. Ananya Bhakti. You can never have Ananya Bhakti for the world. Ananya means exclusively. It is not possible. Because the world keeps changing. You can only have exclusive love towards that principle which does not keep changing. And that is that supreme divinity. The love, the devotion, it brings people together, it attracts people together to each other. Yesterday, I was giving the example of this boy who has resigned, who is studying the scriptures, who only in the head, thinking, came to this realization by more thinking I cannot come to know. And 31st night or 31st daytime, nobody was in his house, everyone had gone away, he was all by himself, and in that desperation, in that frustration, the tears were coming out. And in those tearful eyes, he picked up the remote and just pressed the button. And there was the answer. There was the answer. The movie of Buddha. It had just started, only the subtitles were coming. Not subtitles, the beginning of the movie had just started.
Credits.
Huh?
The credits.
Credits. Now, this is not a coincidence. She was thinking, for so many years she has been in doing bhajan, kirtan for Sai Baba, and one day it dawned on her, enough of bhajan and kirtan, I want to know now. See? Then knowledge came into her life, isn't it? Then it was not that she had to struggle, it just flowed, isn't it? If we are following desires, there will be struggle. If we are flowing with life, thinking that whatever is happening, I have to face it to the best of my ability, but I will not sacrifice my love for the Lord. I will continue to do everything in remembrance of the Lord. Then you start seeing the harmony in your life. Then the right people come to you. The connections that come, everything that happens in your life feeds that idea of devotion towards the Lord. And in this way, when one falls in love with the Lord and nothing else, such a person becomes cut out from the society. When Meera fell in love with Krishna, she is a human being moving around in the world, but she is in her own realm. She is not a part of the society anymore. She is a lover who is obsessed with the love for Krishna. And on the same hand, you will see Tulsidas. He was also in love, but he was in love with his wife. And that love of his life made him cross the flooded Ganges by taking support of a dead corpse. And he crossed the river and climbed a tree and jumped into the balcony and said, "Darling, here I am." She was disgusted by his actions. Because from childhood he had never had any company of women. His mother was not there. No, throughout the teenage and youth, he was a brahmachari, he was a celibate. And when he came into the embrace of his wife, it was something different he had never experienced. The Lord went out of the window and the wife entered. Till he climbed the balcony, the wife threw him out of the balcony. And then the Lord entered again. She said, if you had shown this single pointed devotion towards the Lord, He would have appeared and blessed you.
So that is a trick, Swamiji.
Mm.
But to cross the Ganges on the corpse and climb the balcony.
Yes. That Ganges is the Sushumna. That Ganges is the river of knowledge and devotion within you. The corpse is the body. Without the body, you cannot even cultivate devotion within yourself. See? So there is meaning. So without body disidentification, so you are taking support of the body but not identified with the body. He took support of the dead body. Dead body is a body with whom you have got no attachment. Then you can cross the river of Ganges. Because you have to even cross the knowledge in order to come to the feet of the Lord, to come to the devotion. So, both ways, knowledge must culminate in devotion and devotion must culminate in knowledge. Both are one and the same, but the approach is from different angles. And in this way, such a person, as we see in Narada, he says, what I am going to tell you in these sutras of devotion is not out of an imagination that I have had. This is my own personal experience. We see many people say that, that I had a dream. I saw Lord in my mind. That Lord came and gave me vision. And that person has thrilled about it. And he goes by mistake, he goes to a Vedanti and says, the Vedanta says, it's only an imagination of him, drop it. Another person practices Kundalini, he has got initiation from his master, he's feeling, he's seeing different colors, he's seeing this, he's seeing that, different experiences are there, and he goes to another person and he says, I have this. Kundalini. There is nothing called Kundalini. Another person may say there is nothing called Kundalini, another person may say that the Lord is only a thought in your mind that you have to give up. But what this person is experiencing within himself is his own direct experience, isn't it? People say, oh, you have pain. Oh, pain is only in the mind. Just get away from it. But it's my pain, man.
That's a good one.
Yeah. How can I? It's my pain. I'm experiencing it right now. I'm not, and it is grabbing my attention all the time. Similarly, when devotion comes, it's hungry. The Lord is also hungry for you. He's waiting. And once he sees that someone is available, he wants more of him. For how long? Till that fellow does not become one with him. Exclusively becomes his. Mira became exclusively his. Tulsidas became exclusively his. Tukaram, Eknath Maharaj, Namdev Maharaj, all masters, without having cultivated devotion, they could not have become or been what they are. Mere knowledge in the head can make you a philosopher, but cannot make you realized. So, Sage Narada says here that what I am going to expound because he has experienced this exclusive devotion, as a result of this exclusive devotion, certain experiences take place, and whatever those experiences are, and conclusions that he has come to out of his own experience, he is going to enumerate. That brings us to the third sutra, Amruta Swarupacha Amruta Swarupa cha. Amruta, nectar, Swarupa, your nature, Amruta and nectar. The supreme love for the Lord, called devotion, divine, is of the nature of immortality also. So this devotion, that is the love for the Lord divine, for the supreme Lord, this devotion is also of the nature of immortality. It can never end. Once it catches you, you're gone. Just like I just explained, when a person falls in love, when a boy and a girl fall in love, they're gone for the world. You see the teenagers, I want every boy, I want a red Ferrari. For what? I don't know from where they get this idea. I want a red Ferrari. And they get fixated by that. On the door, on the wall, in their mind, they only see the Ferrari. But they are not ready to do the hard yaka to get it. I know one guy, Dad, don't buy Honda, what is the new one?
Volkswagen.
No, Honda Prelude, no. Not Civic, the next one? No, the bigger one. Okay, CRV.
Oh, it's a new CRV.
So he says, don't buy Honda CRV. He says, then what? No, Ferrari. He says, son, I don't even have 10% of that. No, but you have superannuation. Right? Superannuation for Ferrari, and then do what?
Only realized.
Pray. And on that point, that teenager fights with his father every day.
Oh, fantastic.
That you are not sad. You are what a dabba, what a bomb you have bought, CRV. You should have bought I wanted red. Red CRV. No, not red CRV. It should be low, it should be Ferrari. But they are not ready to do what it takes to get there. They want it free. Amrita Swarupa. So this love, so just like that child is fixated and that car keeps demanding his attention. But can that car give him satisfaction? He has to work hard, he has to gain it, and the day he buys that red car, even if he becomes a millionaire, after that the next tension will begin. I hope nobody scratches it. I hope the tire doesn't get punctured, because one scratch to fix, $5,000. One tire to change, another $3,000. The more expensive the car, the more expensive the servicing. They do exactly the same thing, but the servicing is expensive. You buy our Toyota Echo, $100 servicing over. Still takes you from point A to point B, isn't it? But you buy Ferrari, still does the same job, point A to point B. But now, to maintain that lifestyle, to maintain that desire, you have to work harder to maintain it. So in this world, if we fall in love, you have to work very hard to maintain that love. Ask husbands and wives. Or children, those who have children. You have to work hard. But when you have that love for the Lord, the rule is different. You don't have to work. Initially you work hard, and then that drops away. Then only love remains. Then that love takes care, automatically reorganizes everything for you. And it is not because it will reorganize everything, therefore I am falling in love. No. Then there is a hook that I want something out of love. No. We don't even want liberation from that love for the Lord. But it is seen that in lives of such masters, such devotees, whether difficulties come, whether challenges come, whether great things happen, they are undisturbed by it. They continue to maintain their love for the divine. You see the life of Mirabai, so many difficulties she had. Her father-in-law, he says, you have gone to the court of the Muslim emperor Akbar and sang the song of Lord. This is blasphemy. No one from the Rajput kingdom has ever done that. For this you are punishable with death. She says, I forgive you for thinking like this. Because what you are saying will bring about a repercussion. There will be reaction. And that reaction could be your death. And who will give you that death, or who will give you that punishment? The Lord. So before Lord does anything, I forgive you. The moment she said that, the chains which were binding her, they just dropped off, and she walked back towards the temple, the statue in which she was in love with. That's just a representation. The Lord was in her heart. See? So also happens. This is just one example I am giving. You see in the life of Gora Kumbhar, you see in the life of Bhakta Pundalik. So Amrita Swarupacha, this type of love towards the Lord is immortal in nature. It never becomes less. It doesn't change. Once it is, once the mind gets hooked onto this, once it enters into your heart, you are a goner. When the love for the world enters into your heart, after some time it will change with some other object. So this is Ananya Bhakti, and therefore it is told Amrit Sarupacha. This loving devotion towards the Lord is immortal devotion. It will take, having this love in your heart itself is immortality. No destination to reach, because that is not in our hands. Who has known reality? Nobody has come to know reality. We speak of Brahman. Who has come to know Brahman? Because anyone who has come to know Brahman, he is not available to you anymore. He's gone. He also says, "No, yaar, I can't speak about it." He says, "Why can't you speak?" Scriptures say I cannot speak about it. My experience says I can't speak about it. And what can you do? Then what does Jnaneshwar Maharaj do when he is told by his teacher, please write on your experience of realization? So he wrote Amrut Anubhava, experience of immortal nectar. And what does he write? That I can't write. He writes that I can't speak about it in hundreds and hundreds of verses. He goes on a what is that word? He starts explaining, and then he says, but what am I explaining? I can't explain. I'm using this word and using that word. I'm using this word, I'm using that word. I'm using this example, that example. But all this is not equal to what I have experienced. There he is talking about Guru Tattva. He says, I cannot talk about Guru. Guru is self-existing. And I am speaking from the mind. Mind can never come to know that which is self-existing. Why? Because mind is a product of finite thoughts. Then what can you do? Then towards the end, even after coming to this conclusion in Amrut Anubhav, then what did Jnaneshwar Maharaj do? What did Tukaram do? What did Namdev do? They wrote Bhajan Kirtan. They wrote Abhangas. You heard of Abhangas? What are these Abhangas? They are the songs of pangs of separation to this Lord, divine. So sometimes they are one with it, sometimes the mind is, because Things are there. Sleep will come, hunger will come, and it's the moment they became available to that, oh, the pain that I have forgotten the Lord, even for that one single moment, immediately those words used to come out and people recorded those. And they are the abhangas. So the world can only bring about disturbances in our mind, and because of these disturbances, sorrow and pain come into our life. Because of our insistence that with regards to our love for the world. But when we direct that same love towards the Lord, all the pains, all the disturbances, all the bondages are automatically taken care of. Because now we are not thinking about the joys and sorrows, but we are thinking about the divine theme. We are thinking, not even thinking, I am using the word thinking, we are feeling the joy of being in the proximity of the Lord. And in this way, as the more our attention is towards this a greater principle, this great God, this higher and higher God, wherever we may begin from, the more our devotion increases, and as a result of that devotion, such a devotee eventually experiences the immortality of his being, the immortality of his love, the immortality of the Lord, immortality of this creation. Everything becomes immortal for him. He starts seeing, just like the gopis saw Krishna, Krishna everywhere. In everything. Their husband, the dog, the cow, the trees, the leaves, the river, every wave. Wherever they saw Krishna smiling at them. The mind goes through a metamorphosis from within, not from without, as a result of this devotion. Where you see that this love, that his heart is feeling towards the divinity is the same love which is maintaining this entire creation. He sees that love between that bee and the flower. He sees that love between the mother and the child. He sees that love between the calf and the cow. He sees that love between the blink of his eye and the forms that are being perceived. He sees that love between the in-breath and the out-breath. He sees that love between the day and the night, which are inseparable. His vision gets transformed. He starts intuiting this love everywhere, wherever he puts attention. And therefore, that love becomes immortal for him. Because he is living in that love. He is experiencing that love outside. He is experiencing that love within his heart. And therefore, Amrita Swarupacha. So there is nothing to gain here. It is, in fact, everything is to be dissolved. And when everything, every concept, every idea with regards to anything except the love for the Lord, even that love as a thought gets dissolved in your mind, that time that love becomes immortal. Just like in the life of, we see in the life of gopis. And in this way, just like we say in our Vedanta, Brahma with Brahmaiva bhavati, the knower of Brahman becomes Brahman. Similarly, the lover of the Lord becomes merged in the Lord, becomes immortal. The language is different, but the experience is same. What a person in contemplation through inquiry is getting there, that inquiry cannot mature if the love and devotion towards that goal called Ekmeva Dvitiya Parabrahma is not there. That transcendental truth, if you don't have love for that truth, then you will not abide in that truth. Same is the case here. So understand, without love, immortality is not possible. Here, knowledge is not that you have to come to know something through your mind. Here, knowledge is awakening to the idea that everything is nothing but immortal, nothing but that immortal Lord or divine. So, when we say in Vedanta that the world is an illusion, what is the illusion? People very quickly deride the whole thought. World is illusion, then how will we love? I am an illusion. This is very crazy. No, it is clearly told. The names and the forms are the illusion, but the underlying existence is the truth. When our attention is on the names and forms, and the love is for the names and forms, devotion cannot be cultivated. But when we fall in love with that divine theme, with that divine within our heart, then when we look out, we see the same love pervading the entire creation. And that love is immortal. That consciousness is immortal. That Lord Divine is immortal. That love towards the Divine is immortal because that immortal Lord alone is expressing as the entire creation. So how can that love be separate to the creation? It has to be present there. But now we have developed that vision by the grace. And with this we come to the fourth verse. Yallabdhva puman siddho bhavati amrito bhavati trupto bhavati Yallabdhva puman siddho bhavati amrito bhavati trupto bhavati. Having gained this supreme devotion, the devotee attains perfection and immortality and becomes extremely satisfied. Yallabdhva. Then, labdhva, having gained this loving devotion towards the divine, siddho bhavati, he becomes a siddha. Siddha does not mean he starts reading other people's mind, he starts healing people, he starts manifesting things, he starts all these things. The siddhis are there, yes, but he doesn't pursue the siddhis. The true siddhi is that he starts seeing the entire creation as an expression of the divine. When he starts experiencing the entire creation within and without as not other than that divine, all these smaller siddhis, anima, garima, mahima, vashitva, all these siddhis, they become his slave. He doesn't have to practice them consciously. That is not the point. So, and automatically, such a person, things start happening. The moment you go in front of the mirror, you will be reflected. Similarly, a person who used to go in the presence of these such Mahatmas, in the presence of such a devotee, automatically whatever is meant to happen, happens. If that person goes with the deep feeling of surrender and devotion to this person, and the thought is, let me become healed, that healing will happen. If he says, let me become rich, wealth will come to him. Yesterday when we were seeing this Akkalkot Maharaj, the one devotee, he is poor, 2 children, 3 children, wife, continuously fighting. You good for nothing man, always running around here and there after Mahatmas. And he saw Akkalkot Maharaj come and he runs after. Akkalkot Maharaj, where are you coming after me man? Is not your wife there and children there? You don't even work? Is it not your responsibility? He says, yeah, that is my responsibility, but I love you more. He says, I am going into jungle. I also want to follow. And Swami. The Swami said, take care, huh? There will be many unwanted creatures coming while we are going. Do not be afraid. He is testing him. 10 steps only Swami Samarth goes forward into the jungle. One snake hanging from this branch, one snake hanging from that branch, one snake hanging from so many snakes on the floor. Akkalkot Maharaj, like this, walks straight. This fellow is coming 5 steps behind or 2 steps behind. So between the 2 steps, by the time he reaches where Akkalkot Maharaj was before, 3 snakes come in between. Swami, there is snake here, and snake hanging also, snake this also. If he had crossed that, now if you have complete faith in him, he could have gone and he would have made him a great person. But his attention is deep inside the mind, is somewhere else. Either we can take it this way, or we can say that he is devoted to the Swami and Swami knows what he needs in order to have in his life. So he is coming. He says, take the cap off and collect the snakes. He starts shivering. And Akkalkot Maharaj was a very angry Swami. He will abuse you, he will throw stones at you, he will scream at you. And he said, did I tell you that you pick up the snakes? It's better to be bitten by the snake than face the anger of Mahatma. He was that ferocious. And the moment he screams at him, immediately he takes it out and keeps looking at him and collects the snake here. I don't know how he has collected the snake. And puts it, ties it, he says, go now. And he comes back home. So the moment he comes, the wife screams, you good for nothing, you produce 3 children and you leave us here and I have to do this, I have to do that, beg from here, beg from there, and good for nothing. And keep running after this Mahatma and that Mahatma. What have you gained till today? I got a snake. She says, snake, you Rama? Huh? You got snake. What way? Is snake going to feed us? We are vegetarians. Now we'll have to give milk to the snake. From where will we bring the snake? Milk. And at that time, while he is doing all this, he is thinking, why is the snake not moving? And he opens that the pagdi, the turban, he opens it, and inside there is a golden snake. So his life is made. See? So did Swami Samarth say, go, I give you a golden snake? No. It happened. Their life, such a devotee's life, is only for the benefit of the world. It cannot be any other way. Just like the sun does not say, I am going to benefit the people on the earth by giving daylight. Because for him, day is not existing, night is not existing. We saw in the Amrit Anubhav, isn't it? From his point of view, there is no sun, day and night. From his point of view, there is nothing called light also. Similarly, in the mind of such a devotee, there is no feeling that I must do good to anything. He is just in love with that divine theme in his heart. And only auspiciousness happens around him. Only auspiciousness. It cannot be any other way. This love towards the divine is its own fulfillment. It does not require anything else to complete it. This love is complete. And for such a person, the Lord says, he who has given his heart and mind to me, yoga kshemam vahamyaham. I take care of that person. Whatever he has, I protect that. Whatever he needs in his life, I take care of that also. Whether in the outside life or whether in the inside. Everything he takes care. And yet, we human beings, we individuals, keep insisting that we have to do, and maintain our life. Smart way is get devoted to the Lord and everything will happen. And in this way, such a devotee, once he has gained this benevolent love of the Lord, this feeling in his heart towards the Lord, which remains permanently within his heart, such a person, such a devotee does not need anything from anyone or anything in this world. He is complete, he is fulfilled, and therefore the word here used is amruto bhavati, trupto bhavati. Such a devotee becomes immortal. Such a devotee becomes satisfied. Satisfaction is contentment. He does not seek anything from the outside world to complete himself. Amruto bhavati, immortal. Whether you take the language of Vedanta, is the same. When mind becomes absorbed in the love for the consciousness, for the Atma, that is contentment. That is immortality for that mind, where he has merged into that mind. That merged mind, in that mind, wherein the feeling is, the thought is only of that immortal reality, that eternal reality, he will not get involved in anything else. He is fulfilled because he knows all I could do is this, and even this is by his grace. Whatever happens afterwards is his grace. Every master, having cultivated that devotion, having contemplated on the truth, continue to live in their life. How do they live? By grace, not by will, not by desire, by grace. Then they become an instrument in the hands of that divine to fulfill the divine will. And what is the divine will? At a higher level, to remain happy all the time. At a lower level, be a service to everything and anyone that comes into their presence. And that service is not through a desire. It happens. How does it happen? Just like when you, thought is coming, just like when you wake up, now we are talking about loving devotion. You are in love with yourself. Why? Everyone is. You don't know it probably, but we are all in love with ourselves. Every one of us wants to be alive. Nobody wants to be dead. And that love expresses, the moment you wake up, it expresses as vision, it expresses as hearing, it expresses as hunger, it expresses as I am a part of this beautiful creation. It happens, isn't it? You don't have to think. Eyes automatically start seeing, ears automatically start hearing. By whose grace? By the grace of the self. That life principle. Did you create that life principle and direct, life principle, now function through the eyes as the seer of the forms. Now, life principle, please function through the ears as the hearing principle, hearing the words. No, it happens. That is the grace. Now that is happening inside of you, same thing happens outside as an individual. Such a devotee, when he moves around, that same divine is expressing through him. Anyone who comes with whatever issues, they get solved in the presence of that great devotee of the Lord. Why? Only a person who has come to realize this immortality within himself and outside of himself, only such a devotee as a result of this immortality becomes totally satisfied and contented. Meaning, not even an iota of desire is there within his mind and heart, which will corrupt his continuous flow of devotion to the divine. What happens next? We see in our next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om.